Hey, it's Amanda from Loops and Love Crochet, and today's video tutorial will show you how to work up the stitches for this new beanie pattern on the blog here. You can find this free pattern on the blog, loopsandlovecrochet.com, and you can also find a variety of sizes for this beanie as well. This beanie here is the child size, so in this video tutorial I'll be using the stitch counts for the child size beanie, but if you're following along with this video to make your beanie, you can always look at the written pattern on the blog for the stitch counts for the different sizes. For this crochet project, I'm using the We Crochet Brava worsted weight yarn here. This is a number 4 worsted weight acrylic yarn, but you can use any worsted weight number 4 yarn for this project here. And I'm also using a 5mm crochet hook for this beanie as well. And for choosing colors for this project, there's such endless choices here. I'm choosing to use kind of a speckled yarn as my main base color, and then my accent color is this nice purple color. This one today I'm going to make in this speckled kind of with blue, and then a turquoise that kind of matches in. But you can choose 2 solid colors, a solid and a variegated, or just 1 solid color. The choice is yours. There's so many different color options that you can use for this beanie. So I'll let you grab your yarn and your hook and we'll get started. Okay, to start your ribbing here, you're going to need your yarn and your crochet hook, and we're going to start with a slip knot. And then for the child size of the beanie, you're going to start by working a chain of 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain across here. So that'll be 8 single crochet stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's our first row, row 1, and then from there and all of the other rows, we're going to be working single crochet stitches in the back loop only. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn, and then to get into the back loop only for the single crochet stitches, I'm not going to be working underneath both loops as you normally would. I'm going to be working on the back loop. So if you kind of flip your project upwards, the front loop is the one that's closest to you and the back loop is the one behind. And I'm just going to go into that back loop only and work my single crochet stitches there. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then from there I'm going to chain 1 and turn again. And then I'm just going to repeat the same thing, single crochet stitches in the back loop only. And just to get into the back loop, I just kind of have to tip my project up a little so I can see that back loop. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's a couple rows of our back loop only single crochet. So I'll just be continuing like that until the ribbing is complete. And for the child size, that's when you have 60 rows of the ribbing. Now you'll notice here that I'm working my stitches of single crochet here, trying to work them nice and evenly here. You don't really want to work your tension super tight, especially with the ribbing, because if your ribbing is worked too tightly, it won't have much stretch to it, and it also will be too short, so it won't fit around the person's head that you're making the beanie for. So you want to keep a nice even texture, or tension, sorry, and you want to just kind of keep it even the whole way through, not pulling it too tight. And then when you're done, you can give it a measure and make sure it kind of measures up with the length in the pattern. Your ribbing will have a stretch of a few inches to it. So don't worry if it's not the same circumference as the person's head you're making it for, because the ribbing will have some stretch to it as well. So it stretches around their head and then the beanie stays on. And the back loop only single crochet stitches here give that nice ribbed texture and also give the stretch to it as well. So there we go. There's a bunch of the rows of back loop only single crochet, so you can see the ribbed texture there on both sides here. So I'll keep going all the way up until there's 60 rows complete, and then I'll show you the next part of the pattern. Okay, here are the 60 rows of the ribbing, and you'll see it has a nice stretch to it. You don't want to stretch it out at this point though. So now what we're going to do is we're going to join the ribbing so it's in a circle, and then we'll start working the rest of the height of the beanie in the round here. So to do that, I'm just going to flip my ribbing this way, so the loop where I finished up is on the top right and at the back, and I'm just going to fold my ribbing in half here. Now if you're left-handed, you might want to make sure your loop is on the top left in the back row. So there we go, my loop is in the second layer here and at the top right. And I'm just going to reach through with my crochet hook, and I'm going to grab that loop and I'm going to pull that through in the front layer. And that's in the first single crochet stitch on each of the layers here. So you can see how they match up here as well. And I'm going to chain one, and then I'm just going to work single crochet stitches across in each of the 8 stitches across the ribbing here, and making sure I'm working in both layers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So there, we've joined our ribbing together here, and now we're going to flip this the other way. So turn it where we just did our single crochet stitches, that's going to be on the inside. And then here we are. Here is our ribbing for the bottom of our beanie. And with that yarn tail that we have from when we first made our starting chain, you can work over that in this next part. So my loop here is at the top here where I left off with the single crochet stitches. So I just inserted my hook into there. So from here we're going to chain one, and then we're going to work single crochet stitches around the top of our ribbing here, and it'll be 1 single crochet stitch at the end of each of the rows of the ribbing here. And since we have 60 rows of ribbing for the child size, we'll need the same number, 60 single crochet stitches. So I did a chain one here, and I'm going to work in the same stitch here. So you're just working 1 single crochet into the top of each of the rows here. So it kind of works out to 1 at the top of the ribbing row that's kind of pushed out towards you, and then 1 in between the rows of the ribbing. And also make sure that you don't work this single crochet row too tight, because if you were to work this row with really tight tension, your beanie would not be able to stretch. The ribbing would have the stretch, but then those single crochet stitches would be preventing the ribbing from stretching very far when you go to put the beanie on a head. So there we go, it's just a single crochet at the top of each of these rows here, all the way around. And then when you get to the other end, just double check that you have the right stitch count too. It should be 60 or whatever the stitch count is for the size that you're making, because that will affect the rest of working the height of the beanie if your stitch count is not correct to start with. So you go all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to the other end there, and I'll show you how the joining goes and the next part. Okay, so I'm all the way around on my single crochet here, around the ribbing here. So my last single crochet stitch, I'm going to be joining to the first stitch of the round here with a slip stitch. And I'm going to pull that slip stitch nice and tight. And then our next row here, so I just did a chain one, our next row is going to be the front post single crochet stitches, and that's going to create this kind of row that sticks up a little bit here, creating that texture that you can see in between all the sections here. So to work that here, we're going to be working around the post here on the top of the single crochet stitch. Front post single crochet means that the single crochet stitches are going to be on the front of your project here, and we're going to be going through the stitch from the front to the back. So I'll be inserting my hook into the first single crochet, going around the post here and coming out. So you're kind of working into one single crochet stitch and out the next one just to get around that post there, and then you're going to work your single crochet stitch here. So there we go, and then the next one you'll go into the next stitch, around the post, back out, and then work your single crochet as you normally would. So again, insert into the next stitch, around the post, out the other. So you're yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2 loops, just like a regular single crochet stitch. It just changes where you're entering your stitch here. So you can see when you make a few of these stitches here, your front post single crochet stitches are on the front of your project. You can see the top of the stitch facing you here. So then when you look at your project from the top, you can see your front post stitches are in front of the last row that you just worked, which is right behind here. So you have your top of your stitches of the single crochet row from before, and then the top of your stitches from the front post single crochet stitches are here on the front of your project. So we'll keep working all the way around with our front post single crochet stitches, and then I'll meet you back on the other side here, on the other end of the beanie here, once we work the whole way around, because when you join your front post single crochet stitches, it's a little bit different than when you just join every other row, because you have to actually join back to the round behind too. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're almost all the way around here with the front post single crochet stitches. I just have one left, and I just wanted to show you the very last one to go around. It's a little bit tricky to get your hook in there, but just don't forget that last single crochet stitch. You'll send your hook in on one side of the single crochet, and then when you send it back out again, you're kind of right in between where the chain is and the join from the other round there. So you're kind of squeezing your hook in there for that last front post single crochet stitch. And then we're going to do 2 joins here. The first join is we're going to be joining with a slip stitch to our first front post only single crochet stitch. So just the first one right there. So that's the easy one. The second one is a little bit harder here. So we need to join back to the round behind where the single crochet stitches were from the previous round, so that we're not working right into our post stitches. So you can see with this one sticks out where our front post single crochet stitches are, and then the next single crochet stitch round is worked kind of behind. If you just worked right into your post stitches, the whole project would be kind of on the front there. So I'm gonna look at this project from the top here, and you're gonna do another join back to the single crochet stitches behind the post stitches here. So you can see the V's of those stitches here. And we're gonna join in the first one. And the first one is going to be right next to where you joined it from the previous round. So you can kind of see, you can see all the V's of the stitches here, and then you can see this one stitch going this way instead, and that's where your join was, your slip stitch was from the previous round. And then the little tiny single crochet right next to it, that little blue V there, that's the stitch that we're going to be joining in, the one right beside that kind of one that goes sideways there. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that stitch there so you can see it a little bit better. See where that join is, where the one goes sideways, and there's that first single crochet stitch, and we're going to join with a slip stitch and pull it nice and tight there. So there we are. So now we're joined back to that row of, or that round of single crochet stitches from before, and we're going to work another round of single crochet stitches there. So I'm going to chain one, and you're going to work, I'm just going to push these post stitches down here so you can see your other single crochet stitches, and you're just going to work one single crochet stitch into each stitch around. And again, your stitch count should be 60 or whatever the stitch count is for the size you're making. It shouldn't be changing at all each round. And we're just working one single crochet stitch into each stitch here behind the post stitches, and then you can kind of see the post stitches stick out over the front of the project. So we're just working regular single crochet stitches the whole way around. And then when we get to the other end, we'll be joining it just like normal. The only ones you join a little bit different are when you finish the round of the post stitches and you join to the first post stitch and then you join back to the single crochet round. So there we go. I have a number of the single crochet stitches worked, and then you can kind of see the texture of the beanie starting to show, the post stitches here on the front and then the single crochet stitches behind. So I'm going to finish this row of the single crochet stitches here, and then I'll show you how to join it on the other side, and then I'll show you how to start working these cluster V stitches here that are kind of a peekaboo through the other stitches. All right, so we're just on our last single crochet stitch here behind the post stitches. And my next row of, or round of this beanie is going to be made in the accent color. So I'll be switching to the accent color to do the cluster V stitches here. So I'll show you how that color change works. So I'm just going to work the last single crochet stitch all the way up to the last yarn over, and then I'm going to drop my main color there, and I'm going to pick up my accent color, this turquoise color here, and I'm going to place that on my hook and pull that through, and then I'll be using that yarn to join to the first stitch of the round here. And I'm going to pull that slip stitch nice and tight, and you can also pull the main color tight there too. And then these ends here can be worked over. Well, this, you want to leave your main color attached because you're going to be pulling that up whenever you need it again. You don't have to cut and reattach it each time. That's just going to make you more ends to weave in after. And then this little short end of the blue, I can work in with my stitches, or I can weave it in after. And then now I'll be using my blue yarn. So now I'm going to work my cluster V stitches here. So I'm going to start with a chain of 2. And in this first stitch, I'm going to work my first cluster V stitch. So it's going to go 2 double crochet stitches, chain 1, and then 2 double crochet stitches. So here's 1 double crochet stitch, and the next one, and then I'm just going to chain 1, and then I'm going to work another 2 double crochet stitches all into the same stitch here. So a cluster V stitch is kind of like a regular V stitch, but it's a bit bigger because there's 4 double crochet stitches here. And now I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches. So if I worked into this one, I'm going to skip the next 2, and then I'm going to work another cluster V stitch into the next stitch over here. So 2 double crochet stitches, chain 1, and then 2 double crochet stitches again. So there we go. There are my 2 cluster V stitches there. So you're going to be skipping 2 stitches in between each of the cluster V stitches all the way around. and working them just like this. So you'll be working cluster V-stitch, skip 2 stitches, cluster V-stitch, skip 2 stitches all the way around, and when you get to the end, you'll end with the skip 2 stitches, and then we'll be working our color change at the last cluster V-stitch and then joining to the first cluster V-stitch of the round, and then I'll show you how to work the next stitches, which are the crisscrossed double crochet stitches that come down in between those cluster stitches. Okay, so we're just around to the last cluster V-stitch, so I'm going to work that one up, and then I'll show you how to join and do the color change for the next part of the pattern here. So here is my last cluster V-stitch, and in this round we're not going to change color in the last stitch of the round. So we're going to stay with this accent color, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the first double crochet stitch. So that's right here. So there's my first slip stitch, and now I want to get all the way over to the center of this cluster V-stitch over here. This is where my chain 1 space is, in the middle of my cluster V-stitch. So I'm just going to work another slip stitch into the next double crochet stitch, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch into the center of this cluster V-stitch where the chain is, and I'm also going to change color with that slip stitch there. So I'm going to insert my hook in, drop my blue yarn, pick up my main color there, and I'm going to complete my slip stitch with this white here, and I'm just going to pull the blue a little bit tight behind. There, and then from there I'm going to chain 1. And now for this round, we're going to be working single crochet stitches into the center of each of the cluster V stitches, and then we're going to work a cross double crochet stitch into the two single crochet stitches that we skipped from the previous round. So in between each cluster, each of these cluster spaces in between, there's 2 stitches that we can work in, and we're going to work our cross double crochet stitches in there, and we're going to work those in front of the cluster stitches. So I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to start with my first single crochet stitch here, and now I'm going to work my first cross double crochet stitch in front of the clusters here. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the single crochet stitch from the previous round, and then I'm going to yarn over in front of my project here. So I'm not going to be doing what you would usually do, is where you would pass your hook all the way through and yarn over behind. We're going to pass it through the stitch and then back out in front of the other stitches, and then yarn over in front of our project, and then complete the double crochet as normal. So pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to double crochet into this previous stitch here. So I started with the one farther ahead, and then I'm going to go and double crochet in the one farther back. So yarn over, insert my hook into the stitch, and back out again in front of the other stitches, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops. So there's my first cross double crochet stitch. I'll show you what that looks like again. So I'm going to work a single crochet into the center of this cluster V stitch, and then here we go, we have the 2 stitches that I skipped in the last round. So we're going to start in the one that's farther ahead on the left here, and then we'll work back to the one on the right. So we're going to yarn over, insert the hook into the first stitch, and then back to the front of the project here. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So the double crochet just goes like a normal double crochet. And then we're going to do that the same thing in the next stitch here, or the previous stitch, sorry, to make it that crisscross look there. So there we go, you can see the first 2 crosses there. So I'll just work a couple more so you can see what they look like. There we go. So there's the first few crossed double crochet stitches and single crochet stitches of this next round here. So we're going to continue this the full way across, single crochet in the top of each cluster V-stitch or in the center, and then a cross double crochet stitch in the 2 stitches following it. And you're going to end the round with a cross double crochet stitch, these last 2 stitches that you skipped, and then we'll be joining into the first stitch of the round. So I'll finish off these off camera and then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here we are back to the last cross double crochet stitch here. So I'll just make that last stitch here. And we're not going to be changing color at the end of the round here. The cluster V stitches are the only stitches that are in the accent color. So here we are, and now I'm just going to join with a slip stitch to the first stitch of the round, which is going to be the first single crochet here that we did. So we're going to skip all these slip stitches here, and we're going to go over to this first single crochet stitch of the round, join the slip stitch, pull it nice and tight there, and that's the end of the cross double crochet and single crochet round here. So now we're just going to chain 1, and then we're just going to work a single crochet into the top of each stitch around. So just 1 single crochet in the top of each stitch. So there we go, just like that, the full way around here. And here's what it looks like there. So we're just working single crochet stitches into each stitch around here. So now moving on in the pattern here, you now have instructions for all of the stitches in the pattern here. Because once you finish with the single crochet round, you'll be going back to the front post single crochet and then working your way up from there. So just looking at this beanie here, once we work our single crochet row, we do our front post single crochet, another round of single crochet, and then we change colors, work our cluster V stitches, work our crisscross stitches, and then single crochet, front post single crochet, and then regular single crochet again. So it just works that way the whole way up, repeating the stitches that you already have seen in this video. So as you work up your video, you can rewind back in the video if you need to watch those sections again. And then the only thing different is working your way up, there'll be some single crochet or double crochet decrease stitches. And I do have the instructions for working those stitches, as well as more details about the pattern and more photos. In general, when you follow the written pattern that's on the blog, loopsandlovecrochet.com. I hope you found this video tutorial helpful. I hope you enjoy working up this beanie. I'd love it if you subscribe to this YouTube channel and like this video, as well as follow Loops and Love Crochet on Facebook and on Instagram. Thanks for watching.